this is the third anniversary of this botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. The president, that being Biden, just in case we don't know who's technically in charge, has made light of the fact that no one died on his watch. That clearly was not the case. This morning, the White House and the vice president's office put out statements recognizing this anniversary, very clearly enumerating the names of those killed in action, which seemed kind of odd to me because they really haven't. It's almost like they're overcorrecting at this. Gosh, wouldn't you happen to know it's 70-something days out from the election? But then her side, because it's not her campaign, put out this video, and I want you to take a look at it. All right, I won't critique her salute right now. It's not the appropriate time. Little light on the right shoulder, on the right elbow rather. What do you? I personally, I'll just tell you what I think. I think this is tone deaf. They're trying to overcorrect for something, and I think it's going to backfire. What says Scott Jennings?
Yeah, I think this is one of their biggest vulnerabilities. I mean, when you look back on their administration, where they went underwater was August of 2021 because of the fall of Afghanistan. And she and Biden both went underwater at that point. They've not done anything to acknowledge these soldiers and the families who lost soldiers at that moment. And I suspect that they're anticipating the Republicans, making a deal of this for the campaign. So I understand why they're trying to cure it now. The trouble for her is that, this was one of the most consequential decisions that Biden made. And her words, she was the last person in the room when they made it. And I also suspect they think that national security and just the idea of people visualizing her as commander in chief is probably one of her weakest issues, probably in their polling. And so they're trying to cure that too. I don't like it that they're using the anniversary of this tragedy sort of as a prop for all that. But yeah, I think it's gonna come off a little tone deaf. I'm with you.
All right. So you're a seasoned political operative. You said what I think most operatives: lean into your vulnerabilities, try to show people that you're tough, right? I get she's doing that on crime. I was a tough DA. I fought truancy and blah, 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 blah. This to me, because of the Tim Walz pick, because they've ignored this for 3.5 years, I think that this, as I said, is going to backfire. And that's where I think that the standard political operative says, lean into your vulnerabilities, make it a strength, don't get swift-boated. I'm telling you, I think they're going to wake a sleeping giant in the veteran community on this by trying to be like, I'm sorry, you suddenly care about us?
Yeah, I think that this won't be enough for sure. And I think there's another side of this coin, which is just, there's how you treat our soldiers and how you view the military community, but also how would you be as commander in chief as it relates to policy making and as it relates to keeping the country safe? And do you have the kind of judgment that's required to occupy that part of the job? This is where she's very vulnerable. We have hot spots all over the globe. On Biden and Harris's watch, the globe seems a lot less stable than it did on Donald Trump's watch. So I don't think a couple of gimmicky videos are going to cure that. And I think if Trump is skillful and the Republicans are skillful, they can make this into an advantage. I don't think this is going to be a foreign policy election. But it could be an election about who can you visualize actually having the job. And I do think she's got some length to go there. Final thing, she also hasn't answered any questions about any of this. A video is not a substitute, as you know, Sean, for sitting in front of a journalist and answering hard questions about this aspect of the job.
All right, since you brought this up, what would you recommend right now from Team Trump is the strongest line of attack, right? She's a phony, is one. She hasn't put out any policy statements. She won't sit down with the press. She's flip-flopped on issues. She's a far-left San Francisco liberal. A lot to choose from. And I think a lot of people in the media are saying that the Trump campaign hasn't zeroed in on one. if you were advising them right now, what would you say are the 1-2 top issues that they should be leaning into and focusing on that will actually move the needle?
Well, I think the best question he can ask her on every issue, whether this is at the debate or anywhere else, is you've been in charge for the last 3.5 years. If people think the country's off on the wrong track, whether that's on the economy or immigration or any other issue, why should we leave you in charge? That overlays everything. Her current record. She is the current vice president. And it's not like she's been passive. I mean, she had a job on the border that Joe Biden gave her. That's been a failure. She was the last person in the room on Afghanistan. That was a failure. And on economic policy, which the president sets, well, she had to go up to the Capitol and cast the deciding votes in the U.S. Senate. So to me, vector number one is just not letting her forget that she has a current job and that she failed at it. And that it's why the 35 to 37% of the American people, approve of it and the rest don't. So that's vector number one. And number two, I do think at the debate, he has to hold her account for all of the positions she took when she ran for president in 2019. They trying to walk him back, but they're doing it via anonymous press aides. She, in her own words, has never looked into a camera and said, I did support defund the police, now I don't. I did support, single payer, now I don't. I did support, now I don't. So I think he's going to have to not let her off the hook on that. So to me, the two biggest vectors, Sean, are current record, failures as vice president, plus why did your platform change? You were here when you ran for president. Now you claim not to be. Are we supposed to believe that you all of a sudden became a moderate person instead of a liberal? That's been kind of the hallmark of your entire career.
Yeah. The funny thing is there is so much to choose from, though.
Okay. By the way, I'm not the San Francisco stuff. Going all the way back to California, that doesn't interest me as much because it's not as recent. I mean, I think it's important that
Well, no, it's not as recent, but more of the tagline that you're a San Francisco liberal that wants to move this country further left. I agree. Like the DA stuff, yeah, fine, whatever. But I feel like a lot of people want to tag her as like kind of a la Nancy Pelosi. You're a San Francisco liberal. I just don't know that. Or you call it what you will. Maybe you don't call her a San Francisco liberal, but you call her a crazy left liberal. But there's this element of Team Trump that wants to brand her as far left, crazy, extreme.
Well, I think you can do that with her voting record, her policy positions, and her issues. I mean, would you rather be a San Francisco liberal or would you rather be Joe Biden's top lieutenant? I mean, you got to remember, Biden is still extremely unpopular. Right. I mean, this guy and his administration is unpopular. Nobody thinks he's done a good job. I mean, there's a lot of unpopularity associated with the decisions she made in the last 3.5 years. Truthfully, I don't know what the correct answer is. I understand the impulse for each of them. It just strikes me that the thing that they're trying to do is wipe off the fact that she's an incumbent. And Republicans have to remind everybody she is an incumbent. She has a job now. She's in office. She's making decisions right now. And by the way, you've told us repeatedly in polling that you don't like those decisions. So let's not let her absolve herself of the failure of this administration.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I mean, look, I've said this repeatedly, and I think you'd agree that because I think I see enough of the comments that you make go viral that just using her words. Here's what she said about X, fill in the blank. The words that she uses connote such a far leftist mind frame a frame of mind that I would just keep playing her. And not, stop making the attack saying this is what she said on X issue and just start playing her and let her defend her as opposed to, that attack isn't true. It was taken out of context. Just play her. Because I think most people, when they actually get to know the real Kamala Harris, aren't going to like her.
Yeah, certainly they won't like her policy positions. I mean, she was even too far left for the Democratic primary, right. Back in 2019. And so if you're too far left for your own party's primary, you're too far left for the country. I mean, it would be kind of a fascinating exploration to ask her how it is that you arrived at this platform before, and now you have completely repudiated all of it now. I do think there's a rejection in our politics right now, Sean, of inauthenticity, phoniness. And the idea that you could be for all this thing and now you're totally against it and we can trust you on that. I think people will sometimes forgive wacky policy positions as long as they think you're being real with them. And so she's obviously not being real with us on one front. Were you not being real then or are you not being real now?
Well, and that's why I presented that sort of menu of options, because she's a phony. She'll be
Yeah.
whoever you want. She has no core. She's literally like, she wants to say she's tough on crime and then let out the BLM protesters. She wants to say that she's tough on the border when she had an open border policy and she didn't get to the root causes. She'll be for whatever she needs to be to get, to advance herself and to get more power. Frankly, that's the core of the Democratic Party in the leftist movement, is it's all about power and control. And I think that she has exemplified that by being whatever she needs to be to whomever she needs to be at that particular moment.
Yeah, I think too. There's also something to be said for the downstream effects of electing another Democrat. I mean, the Senate Democrats have made it pretty clear what they want to do. If they could arrange it the way they wanted, they would go over to the Capitol. They would eliminate the filibuster. And when you do that, and you have a president and an administration that's malleable on this stuff, they would enact a bunch of terrible things. So it's not just the things that she said she wanted to do before. It's also all the new things that have come up ever since. Do you have any doubt that if Democrats controlled the Senate, or it was a 50-50 Senate, and they had Tim Walz as vice president, that they would eliminate the filibuster and just start ticking off all their liberal wish list? That's the thing. It's one thing for her to say she no longer is for these things because she believes she needs to govern from the center as president. But it's totally another thing that when you get in there and you're just one vote away from being able to do anything you want to do, there's just not much barrier between her and what could be an extremely radical presidency. Look, Biden did this. Biden ran as some deal-making moderate. He turned out to be one of the most liberal administrations that we ever had. Why should we believe she's any different? She's a liberal. Now she's claiming to be a moderate. Why should we believe that the person who just participated in this hoax isn't doing the exact same thing again?
Yeah. No, another example of I'll say whatever I didn't know anything about Joe Biden. No, but I want to kind of run through a bunch of issues quickly if we can, because I want to start with I want to get to the debates, but let's start with the quote unquote interview. If you read the media, she has claimed to do an interview, and she's quote going to do an interview this week because the month ends, and she promised to do one. I still don't. So let me just start with this. Do you think she actually conducts an interview with a credentialed member of the media by the end of the week? Yes or no?
Oh, gosh. I think probably yes. But it wouldn't shock me if they renege on this on this promise. But if I were her,
but, okay. So that being said, let's just pretend they call Scott Jennings and they say, Scott, we love your commentary, we love it, and we need your political acumen. Who should we sit down with? And just, I get it. Like, I'm not, but if you had to be objective right now, who would you tell them to do an interview with?
Oh, God. Well, I would want to do an interview with someone that would be considered to be the most credible. Somebody who, in the aftermath of it, wouldn't be viewed as someone who has thrown them a bunch of softballs just to get them off the hook of this promise. So that I would pick somebody who's viewed as a real, tested, credible journalist. And so, there's a bunch of them out there, but I would not pick something that in the aftermath people would say, oh, yeah, of course. You just,
let me ask you this, because so politically, operative to operative speaking, I agree with you. I remember, I don't want to go down this path, but I agree with you. Pick someone, take it head on, and then no one can complain that you didn't, right? So you choose someone who, I remember, I think it was Obama did Bill O'Reilly, the Super Bowl and it was like, people were like, well, you can't say you didn't take a tough interview, right?
Right.
Granted, Fox had that. I mean, that's a different circumstance because Fox had the Super Bowl, but he didn't back away from it, and I think he got a little credibility. Let me kind of throw this out at you and tell me what you think. She's gotten a pass already. I mean, she basically said, when we do an interview in a month, and everyone's like, all right, we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't give her any pushback then. If I'm her team, why not roll the dice and say, you know what? Let's just check the box. Let me pick somebody who I can, quote unquote mainstream. So I go to Kristen Welker at NBC, or Eugene Daniels at Politico, who basically is a paid employee of the Kamala Harris campaign, and say, I did an interview, but now it's up to you guys in the press corps. Because if you don't, I know that they're going to be favorable to me because we've all watched them. Like, those two just are tip of the iceberg. I can check a box. I know you guys in the media won't criticize them because they're part of your family. So I get to say I did it, and I know you won't critique me. Why not do that?
I mean, that's one way to handle it. But if she doesn't, and no matter who she picks, if she doesn't get the kinds of questions that you and I are discussing, here's your past statements, here's your current statements, here's your decisions that you made as vice president. If she doesn't get that kind of cadence or that kind of questioning, if it's all just fluff, if it's all just, I don't think it's going to matter who does it. It's still going to leave her.
I think in a normal world,
I understand
you're
your
right,
impulse.
but I don't. In a normal world, you're right, Scott. But I feel like they won't criticize one of their own, so they're going to say, "Well, she did it, yay." I mean, I guess that's my thing. Is I think this is a box checking exercise. I think she picked somebody, and all of the press corps has to sit on their hands and say, "I agree. I don't. That was ridiculous. It wasn't that tough. They didn't ask these 10 questions." But they can't criticize because they cannot go after one of their own.
I guess the devil's advocate on this is the American people expect presidential candidates to be tested, and ultimately it will become a problem if they're not. And so if you wind up,
but I think that this goes back to my point, though. I think that when X% of the American public get their get their information filtered by these guys, and the answer that you get on the Today Show or Good Morning America when you wake up and goes, Kamala Harris sat for her first tough interview, because they're not going to frame it as a softball. They're going to protect their own. And that's the thing, is that I think that, and you go, oh, I didn't know that. She did an interview. Okay, good. Like, it's like when you read stories and you hear these things that in studies, people only read the headline. They don't get to the bottom. So no one's going to go, let me read the transcript of the interview. They're going to go, oh, she sat down with an interview with Kristen Welker. Okay, easy. Okay, great, check box. All right, I want to pivot to two more issues. One, big thing today, debate on debates. She's supposed to do this debate on September 10th. Somehow, when Trump agreed to it with Biden, that was sacrosanct. It had to be kept in, even though that was for Biden. Now, Kamala Harris's team wants to change the rules. They want to have the mics on the whole time. And Trump's team is saying, wait a second. So we had to agree to hold the debates, but now you get to change the rule. So does this debate happen, in your opinion, and how does it end? Like, do they all agree on the rules, or?
So I think it will happen. I think Trump needs it to happen, actually, for some of the reasons we've just been discussing. He, at some point, he has to, in a public forum, go after her about her record and her positions. If that doesn't happen, it is a huge detriment, I think, to Trump. Like, we have to see some exploration of this. And I've said it's all on his shoulders. I don't think we can expect anyone else to do the job for him. And so it's all on his shoulders.
Who's got more riding on it? Who's got more riding on that debate, him or her?
Well, I think they both have a lot riding on it. But I think, honestly, if Trump cannot prosecute a case against her at some point on her current record, remind everyone she's the current VP and that she had this radical agenda, that's a huge problem. Like, she cannot be allowed to reinvent herself. She cannot be allowed to say, I just landed here in a spaceship 6 weeks ago, I'll take it from here. Like, she has a record. She has been at the center of American life and public affairs for the last several years. She has a voting record, she has a presidential platform, and she has a record as vice president. I don't know that that's going to get explored correctly and deeply outside of this debate. So I guess from that perspective, I think Trump has a lot riding on it, because if that goes unexplored, or if we just wash that whole thing away, and she's, ultimately, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make her generic Democrat, right? She just generic Democrat, whatever you want your Democrat to be, that's what she'll be. That's what they want the American people to believe. He cannot run and be allowed to, or have to run against generic Democrat. He needs to run against what she is, which is radical Democrat or failed vice president or Joe Biden's top lieutenant, whatever you want to call it. That's what he has to run against. And to me, the debate is where he's going to make that case. So I think he does have a lot riding on it, and I hope they get it together because he needs it.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.